Hi, I'm Jess King with Sounding's Fine Audio in Denver, Colorado. We're a premium hi-fi shop that's been in business for over 40 years. Today we're going to continue our series on the building blocks of a hi-fi system, and we're going to talk about preamplifiers and amplifiers. Preamplifier and your amplifier, they are the thing between your source and your speakers. Very, very important. The preamplifier section, just in a nutshell, is going to handle the input switching. So if you have more than one source, say your streamer or your turntable, it's going to allow you to toggle between those. And then your amplifier is going to take that signal and boost it so your speakers can actually run. But why would you actually want to have these in separate boxes, or why would you want them to have it in an all-in-one piece like an integrated amp? Your preamplifier, while it is in charge of the switching, it also is in charge of the volume. And the volume control is actually a pretty important spot in the signal chain. That's actually where a lot of the sound quality goes to die. The way that a signal goes through there, your volume control actually pushes down the signal, and then when you turn the volume up, it's releasing its hold on it. There are a lot of different ways that the signal can go through there. There are a lot of different ways that you can control that path, and that has a huge effect on the sound quality. That's why you can have a preamplifier that might be $1,500 or even $15,000 or beyond. A lot of it has to do with how gingerly it holds on to that signal and how gently it passes from one input to the amplifier and through that volume control. The amplifier takes the small signal from your preamp and boosts it so that it's large enough for your speakers to see. It's in the name. It actually amplifies it, just as the preamplifier amplifies it for the amp. One way to think of these things is you have this teeny tiny signal that comes out of your source, and it's not big enough to drive your speakers. If you've ever taken an aux cable from, say, a turntable and plugged it into not a phono input, you've probably experienced that you've got to crank the volume all the way up to just get a little bit of sound. That's because the signal is just too tiny to actually output from the speakers, so you need something in between. Your preamplifier has a relationship with the amplifier, just like the amplifier has a relationship with the speaker. So there's a whole chain of events that has to happen to the signal to make sure that you can get that beautiful output from your speaker itself. So there are a couple ways you could go about choosing these pieces. Synergy is really important. So if we have kind of an entry-level or beginner setup, you may not actually have a separate preamplifier and an amplifier. They may be in one box. That's known as the integrated amplifier. There are a lot of integrated amplifiers out there. There's a lot of good reason to have all of those components in one box, namely convenience, size, price. By having a lot of components like the power supplies and those kind of things shared within one box, you can help keep the price down, keep it more affordable, fewer cables as well, and still have excellent sound quality. There are a lot of very, very, very high quality integrated amplifiers. Just because it's in one box doesn't automatically make it bad. There are very high-end, say $20,000, $40,000 and beyond in integrated amplifiers, so it's not an Achilles heel to have everything all together. The next step up, if you did want to take it to the next level, would be to actually separate your amplifier and preamplifier. So this would be the step above the integrated amp. This gives dedicated power supplies to the preamplifier section, gives dedicated power supplies to the amplifier, gives you more flexibility. Maybe your speakers have special needs. Maybe they need to have more power than what a typical integrated amp would give. Maybe you want to graduate to monoblock amplifiers. Having a separate preamp and amplifier stage will give you that type of flexibility. Having those signals in separate boxes also gives you better sound quality. If you like choosing various cables, you can change the interconnect, the RCA cables or the XLR cables that connect the preamplifier to the amplifier section. It's another way that you can flavor the sound without having to reset everything in the entire system. The top end way would be going to a more premium preamplifier, or maybe even tubes. There are a lot of different types of inputs and outputs that you can get. We won't go into the weeds on solid state versus tubes, but suffice it to say that you can mix and match these different technologies to get a sound that you want. Maybe you want to biamp your system. You can use multiple amplifiers per speaker, and you might need a special preamp to accommodate all of that. Maybe you want tubes on your preamp to kind of flavor the front end, but you want solid state power just to get a little more oomph without having to worry about changing out tubes regularly. We have several different options if you were to come into soundings at multiple price points, and we're able to actually put those together so you can hear their differences. When it comes to amplifiers, there are a lot of things to consider. So wattage is one thing, but wattage is not everything. We have low power amps that would blow your mind from a sound quality perspective. High current is really what you want to look for. So it's not, if you think of a river and water flowing through a stream, it's not just how much water is there, but how fast is the stream moving. That's kind of a basic way to think about watts versus amperage, or the current that the amplifier can provide. Your speaker, the size of the room, how loud you listen, all of these things have a big effect on what we would recommend for the best pairing. You really need to lean on your dealer if you're not sure what these specifications mean. It's very easy to demonstrate why you would want to have more or less wattage in a given system. We have some very high-end amplifiers that are, say, 50 watts that are just absolutely wonderful. And we have some very affordable high wattage amps that sometimes can outperform that higher dollar, lower wattage amp, depending on the situation. Very important that you get this pairing right. Just like preamplifiers have different technologies, there are several different amplifiers technologies to choose from as well. So in the basic sense, you have solid state and tube. Tube amplifiers versus solid state amplifiers each have their benefits. A low power tube amp may bring more romanticism and texture, whereas a larger solid state amp will provide lots of headroom and more watts for the dollar. Again, depending on what you're listening to, one may benefit you more than another. With solid state amp technology, there are different classes that you'll read about. There's Class A, Class AB, Class D. This has to do with how the current is actually delivered. It has to do with the efficiency of the amplifier, meaning when it pulls electricity from the wall, how much of that electricity actually makes it to your speakers. Depending on your budget and depending on how much ultimate clarity you want, you may prefer one technology over another. There's a lot of debate over which one is the best. I think a lot of people would say that Class A amplifiers provide the most control, but they tend to also give the lowest dollar per watt value. So while you may have some sound improvements, you may spend a little more to get that. But it's not always that cut and dry. There are a lot of Class AB amplifiers and Class D amplifiers that can give traditional Class A run for their money. When it comes to actual sound quality differences in a preamplifier, it can be quite noticeable. Because you have different ways of getting the sound from your source into the preamp itself, once it's in there, there are factors like noise is the big one. How much crosstalk is there from other inputs? Are there relays that are actually shutting down the unwanted noise from that signal? Once that little signal is in there, how does that preamplifier actually grow it so that it's ready for the amplifier? All of these things will affect the sound quality. If you go into a higher end preamplifier, you can expect to have a bigger sound stage, lower noise floor, more texture, and in a lot of cases, better bass. As always, your mileage may vary. You'll definitely want to check the pairing to make sure that it gets the sound quality that matches your expectations. But a preamplifier is definitely a place where you can expect to get some extra quality. The sound quality of your amplifier can make a big difference in the system, but it is heavily reliant on what is further ahead of it in the chain, meaning the preamplifier and the source. If you have very modest components, you may not notice as big of a difference in the amplifier compared to if you have a very high quality source, a very high quality preamp, it will make sure that a pristine signal is amplified compared to maybe a mediocre or a noisy signal. Whatever noise enters into the amplifier, that is going to be amplified through your speaker as well. You'll find reviews out there that will sometimes say that amplifiers don't make as big of a difference. I think it's very situational. We have some very high-end amplifiers that in a lower-end system may not make as big of a difference as if you have a much higher-end system. The best way to experience these differences is to come into a shop where you can actually try these different combinations. We offer in-home demos. We can bring a new preamp or a new amplifier out to try in your system. That way you don't have to take our word for it. We can easily demonstrate those differences here in the shop, but it's definitely more profound when you're hearing it on a system that you're very, very familiar with. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We have more videos coming your way.